episode of Primility Primer, our morning reminder of the power of balancing pride and humility as we go about our daily lives. This is episode number 44. I am your host, Jared Morris, and this is Friday, so we're going to do another episode of Primility in the Wild today. And this is finding examples, explanations, anecdote stories of primility just out there on other sites, in podcasts, in books, in articles, and bringing them here, providing their context to help us see primility perhaps in a different light. And for today's episode, I actually want to thank Peter Morneault. I hope I pronounced your last name right, Peter, who's been a longtime reader of the Primility blog, listener of the podcast, and he sent me this article a few weeks ago, and I really, really appreciate it. And I want to talk about it on today's episode. And the article is about arrogance in relationships and how we deal with that. The article is entitled "Arrogance in Relationships: How to Deal with and Heal It." It's written by Jack Adam Weber, wakeup-world.com. And when we think about pride, but excess pride, right? The bad kind of pride. Arrogance is one of the first words that comes to mind. And in fact, if you look at the definitions of the words, right? Pride, a feeling or deep pleasure or satisfaction derived from one's own achievements. Arrogance, offensive display of superiority or self-importance. Overbearing pride. So clearly, even just from the definitions there, arrogance describes pride in excess, pride that is taken to that level beyond where it is productive, where it is something good for us to have. And that's what we talk about all the time here at Primility, is that sweet spot where pride and humility are balanced, not where pride is way out on the edge and it becomes arrogance, it becomes conceit, but where it helps us have confidence and helps us step up and say things that we should say, right? And the same is true on the other end of the spectrum with humility. Well, this article starts out talking about arrogance and how arrogance is rooted in defensiveness, rooted in insecurity, and can manifest itself in ways that are really unhealthy in relationships. And these can be any types of relationships, not just romantic relationships, but professional relationships, personal relationships, familial relationships. So any of those types of relationships. And as the article goes on, he describes basically how humility, and that's the word that he uses throughout the article, is the antidote for this and is the way to balance out this arrogance. But he's very quick not to condemn arrogance as bad, right? There are good elements of arrogance. And he's very quick to not simply say that all types of humility are perfect and golden and wonderful, because there's even a section about the bad part, the negative impact of false humility. And so I really, really resonated with this article, and I think that you will too, and I encourage you to read it all. And if you go to primility.com/show/044, you can find the link for this article. Certainly more in it than we can get into in one short Primility Primer episode. But there are a couple of excerpts that I wanted to pull out and that I wanted to discuss real quick for today's episode. So here's one of them, and I love this one. So again, talking about how to overcome arrogance in relationships. Yet to find truth in what another says, I have to be honest with myself. I'm quoting the article here. What can help me be honest or humble is if I engage with another person who also is willing to be both vulnerable and humble, confident, or arrogant. So our own to therefore shape it, not being heard or regarded, we need to make sure we are doing our part to hear and value our partner. Are we treating them the way that we want to be treated? And I will say that my ability to function effectively inside of relationships, again, romantic, friend, family, all of them, really improved once I realized this idea. Am I treating people how I want to be treated? Because this is not a lot of times my default mindset. My default mindset tends to be selfish, tends to be a little bit self-serving. And I have really had to train myself basically to say, okay, wait a minute, let me back up here. And instead of worrying about what this person is doing and how they're treating me, maybe I need to look at how I'm treating them, because maybe I am inadvertently fostering this way that they're treating me because I'm treating them in a similar way. And of course, the way that we treat people oftentimes ends up being how they treat us back. And it's interesting because, Heather and I had an example of this just a couple of weeks ago where, she brought something up to me that she knew would probably be difficult for me to hear. And immediately as she started talking about this and introducing this topic, I found myself getting defensive, and I found myself, all these insecurities starting to bubble up because I knew that she was right and that she was pointing out, something that I hadn't done to the fullest of my ability that I wish I had done better. And it really took me about 5 to 10 minutes into the conversation to really back up and say, wait a minute, I need to actually listen here and internalize this. And let's have a conversation about it instead of just getting defensive and, going back and arguing and saying that you're wrong, right? That was arrogance. And again, it's not, and this article really talks about this, getting rid of arrogance in relationships, balancing with humility. It's not just about admitting that you're wrong when you're not wrong, right? And that's where the pride part, before it becomes arrogance, can be beneficial, because you don't just want to be admitting that you're wrong to things that you're not wrong about, but that doesn't mean that we can't listen and be open and be vulnerable and open that up with a humble heart so that we can actually communicate. And so I've found that to be so true in my own relationships. And I love how he words it there. Are we treating them the way that we want to be treated, which is so important. One more is that, and this is another quote from the article. So arrogance is not lethal unless it is held unwaveringly. In contrast, unrelenting arrogance is irresponsible and can be abusive. Since we are all defensive, entitled, and in denial about something, we all, to a degree, are arrogant. When our arrogance wavers and is open to self-reflection, correction, and a heartfelt examination, we can call it responsible self-confidence. It's healable. This means that I embody my arrogance not with porous confidence, but with some measure of humility. If I don't have enough humility already in hand, I won't have enough inner strength to recognize my shortcomings. This way, a greater capacity for joy, truth, and love will be lost on me. I mean, that sums up the Primility mindset right there. And I love responsible self-confidence. In a lot of ways, that's what we mean when we say pride. And for anybody who has struggled with the terms pride and humility, and I know that you're out there because you've let me know about that, which I've appreciated. And I know that the terms pride and humility don't always resonate with everybody. Maybe try thinking about pride in that sense as responsible self-confidence, because I think ultimately that's really what it is. And then when you balance that with humility, well, now you're in that sweet spot, right? And again, as he says, when our arrogance wavers and is open to self-reflection, correction, and heartfelt examination, Primility, we talk about it's self-awareness for self-determination. Well, that's the self-awareness part right there, right? When we are going too far to either side, when pride has become arrogance or responsible self-confidence has become arrogance, that's when we've got to have some measure, some way, some framework of having self-awareness to pull ourselves back, right? To correct, for heartfelt examination. Then it is healable. As this article says, we get back to that responsible self-confidence. We get back to a place in the middle where now we can be somebody who isn't coming at conversations, coming at issues from a place of defensiveness and weakness, which is so often unproductive, but more this place of responsible self-confidence where we are more able to listen, more able to be open, more able to be truly honest about ourselves with somebody else. And truly that vulnerability is what makes relationships work. And I know, people who are listening who have been married for a long time, who have had kids, I'm sure, know more about this than I do. And I would love your input. Email me, jared@primility.com. Go to primility.com/show/044. I would love to know, both as potential, topics for future episodes, and just for myself, as I about how Primility Primer. Of course, our Friday Digest will be coming out later today. You can go to primility.com/join and get on that. It will have a summary of every episode. And also Monday morning, there will be a new email in your inbox, 250 words or less, to help get your Monday morning started off on the right track. Go to primility.com/join, get on our email list, and let's deepen our connection one more step and get even better at balancing our pride and our humility, which is the goal of what we do here every day at Primility Primer. Thanks for being here. Thanks for making this another great week of Primility Primers. I'll be back on Monday with another brand new episode. Wrist bump.